So let's continue on the conversation looking at the main topic here today.
Certainly, travel is a main topic that we talk to many clients about here at Capstrat, and no surprise, 70% of adults over the age of 50 plan to travel, whether it's internationally or domestically this year. But it's also a big part of our financial planning, incorporating it into the budget, talking about, is there any insurance needs? So really looking forward to talking more about this topic today. There's a lot that goes into this.
We're going to narrow it in on some key planning points here, and certainly can expand on these in one-on-one conversations. But the first one that we do have conversations around is just travel insurance. So why don't you kick us off there?
Yeah, so travel insurance, it's one of those things that we get questions. Do you need it? What kind of travel insurance do you need? What does it cover? And that really comes down to reading some of the fine print, understanding with the trip that you're booking, are there any contingencies in place that you need to keep in mind? But even like medical coverage, especially if you're 65 and over, covered by Medicare, typically international coverage is not provided under your Medicare policy.
The best practice is to really dig into the details. First, understand the base case of what you have. Reach out to your insurance carriers, whether it's Medicare or private insurance related, and start to ask those questions. Because then you can build a plan above that to identify what additional insurance you might need.
If you recall back in 2010, I believe that the UK airspace was shut down because of volcanoes in Iceland, and it was shut down for 8 days. And this friend is a type 1 diabetic, and an additional 8 days without medical supplies is certainly something that he hadn't accounted for. So when we think about those what ifs, that's where having travel insurance, especially on the medical front, if you need prescriptions, if you have a pre-existing condition, that you have coverage to back you up to ensure that you're getting the care you need, no matter where you are in the world, right?
Yeah, it's only needed when you need it. And if you don't have it in place, it's much more painful. So,
right.
And I think it just goes back to be curious, dive into that, and don't just assume. Just because you have coverage, you want to make sure it's going to be accessible when you do travel. So as we look at the next key point, is we want to focus on travel documents. This is an important piece, especially as we think about communication. And also making sure you're prepared, again, for those what ifs. So why don't you kick us off here?
Yeah, so whether you're going internationally or domestically, again, there's a lot of different documents you need. Your driver's license, passport, even if you have auto insurance and are on a road trip, making sure that you have coverage. If you're driving into Canada, for example, you want to make sure your coverage applies there. Having those sorts of documents, powers of attorneys, and itineraries, those are all things that we like to see you have a copy, whether it's loaded into a digital platform or physical copies for you and a loved one at home, just so you can reference, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that comes to mind, especially as we're just talking about the medical side, is also having a copy of your power of attorney documents.
Right.
Just keeping those with you along the way in case something happened. Obviously, there's other important contacts there as well. But then also going back to the communication piece, just making sure that you have provided to either the important people within your estate plan or that are part of your power of attorney relationship to make sure that they have a copy of these documents just in case, God forbid, something happened to you. So not just while you're traveling to have a copy of your passport or in case you lose your passport, but then also making sure you're communicating with the people at home and the loved ones to know where these documents are, or they have a copy directly. Right.
Well, and another important point is communication is important with the documents you have, but also along your trip, letting loved ones know where you are and kind of how things are going. If you're sick, communicating those kind of things. So someone that is looking out for you perhaps at home can stay in touch and make sure that you're doing well along the way.
Yeah, I know our family usually creates a WhatsApp, and whether you like it or not, you're being carried along the way of someone's travel plans. But more importantly, is my parents like to provide updates, but it's a nice way to understand where they're at, how they're doing, and it's very cost efficient just based on a communication standpoint. As we think about these topics, there's a few ways that we can help. Obviously, there's only so much we can do from an advisory standpoint, but one of the things we try to do if we understand that you are traveling is just to ask questions and make sure you're thinking about some of these topics, but then also starting to think about how to make this a great experience. God forbid something happened, you want the best outcomes, but regardless, having a great plan in place can just create a smoother experience.
The financial plan is a big piece of what drives your budget, but we get questions. Can I afford this trip? And that's really where if you have any doubts or you would like to take a trip, that's where we're happy to revisit this within the scope of the financial plan. Especially if something is increasing in price, let's talk about it before you make a gut reaction. And that's a big part of the conversations we have. We've seen a number of clients do things different ways, and that's where we can bring some thoughts to how you might pursue it if you're unsure. So.
And even the next one with exchange rates, this is very important. Your best bet is to obtain the currency you're seeking locally, but you also have to make sure it's easily accessible.
Right.
Because in the big cities, it's definitely going to be a little bit more accessible. But if you're in the rural parts, of a country, sometimes it may not be as accessible to exchange dollars for euro or to do that withdrawal from your bank account. What's the most effective way to minimize any additional expenses along the way? Those are things that you want to just keep in mind, and we got some best practices and ideas always to share around that.
Yeah.
Anything else on payment methods?
Well, just as we talk about credit cards, there's great opportunity with using your credit card to get the best exchange rate, but looking at having a credit card that you can use internationally if that's a goal, but utilizing the points and using the best type of credit card based on kind of your travel desires. Those are things that we talk about quite often, looking at utilizing points. So if you have questions on maximizing your points, we can get into that in more detail. So.
And I guess the final thing on the payment method, as we were talking about the insurance coverage, some of the credit cards out there actually have travel insurance built into them.
Right.
So it's kind of understanding not only what you have on the fine print of the medical side, but then other resources like your credit card might be an option. You might have plenty of coverage that would be sufficient for your personal travel needs or even medical needs as well. So.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that concludes our topic here today. Obviously, we wish you all the best on your travels.
Yes.
But we'd love to have that conversation well in advance to make sure that you are planning appropriately for all those different what ifs and see where we can add value along that conversation. For now, we'll see you next month and have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.